You guys seem to like the previous video I made about this, so here is part 2 with more countries, nations, and peoples that moved throughout time, taking most of the suggestions you made in the comments. Let's jump straight into it, but before that I need to take 45 seconds to thank the sponsor of this video, Conflict of Nations. It's a military-themed grand strategy game set in the late 20th and early 21st century, fielding present-day and highly modern battlefield technology. When you play, you take control of a nation of the world and its armies, fighting against other players for world domination with over 100 players per game. You can form alliances, and all units move in real time, so you can take direct control of the battlefield with detailed plans. There's over 100 beautifully modeled modern weapon systems such as nuclear ballistic submarines, stealth strike fighters, airborne infantry units, and many more. You can play now for free on PC or on mobile. Click the link in the description to get 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. This offer is only available for 30 days, so don't waste any time if you want to try out the game. Now back to the video. Let's start with the 3 on the thumbnail. First, the Turks. The territory of modern Turkey, mostly in Anatolia, has been inhabited and controlled by many people throughout history. The modern Turks descend from the mighty Ottoman Empire, so it makes sense to understand how these arrived to a territory previously controlled by the Roman and then the Byzantine empires. The Ottoman dynasty is named after the first ruler of the Ottoman polity, Osman I. According to Ottoman tradition, he was descended from a Turkic tribe which migrated out of Central Asia in the wake of the Mongol conquests. In fact, it seems all of the Turkic states of modern times were settled as a result of this Turkic migration from the east. According to one hypothesis, they emerged in Outer Mongolia, expanding their rule there, and finally migrating to the west. This theory matches the modern location of Turkic states and Turkic people, even all the way up to Siberia. Osman was one of them, and through means that we simply do not know, he was at one point in the 13th century able to establish a small principality in the northwest of Anatolia in the region of Bithynia. From this, he and his successors were able to further expand, first in Anatolia itself, and then further into the Balkans as well as the Middle East and North Africa, creating one of the strongest and the largest empires that Europe and the Middle East have ever seen. Eventually they began losing land, and with the end of World War I, they were reduced to the territory of the modern Republic of Turkey, making, I believe, a perfect example of moving territories. First from their origin in Central Asia, a proto-Turkic state, then to a small principality in Anatolia, expanding into an empire and becoming reduced to their modern land. Then moving to Cilician Armenia. The history of Armenia is one that dates back hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. Today, Armenia exists here and holds this territory. However, this changed throughout history. First, Bagratid Armenia existed in part of this territory, stretching further west and south. They existed between the years 880 and 1045 AD. As the Seljuks invaded around this time, many Armenian refugees fled their attacks and moved southeast to the southern coast of Anatolia in modern-day Turkey, centered in the Cilicia region. An Armenian principality was founded in 1080 by the Rubenid dynasty, then becoming its own kingdom in 1098 and lasting until 1135. They began with a very small territory, then expanding it further and then some more, reaching the southern coast. By 1200 they were known as Little Armenia, perhaps in opposition to the Greater Armenia of antiquity. They had two odd allies, the Mongols and the Crusader states, uniting with them to fight against the common enemy, the Mamluks. In the 13th and 14th centuries, both of their allies disintegrated and they were left alone to fight the Mamluks, losing more and more territory until finally being conquered. Eventually, Armenians mostly moved back to the Caucasus region and the country was re-established finally in the 20th century. Next is Israel. Today's territorial control of Israel is a whole subject in itself. That's not what I'm going to get into here. However, the de facto territory under Israeli control today is interestingly different than the territory of the ancient kingdom of Israel. The territory of the ancient kingdom stretched east of the Jordan River, precisely into what is today modern Jordan. Up north, it also seems to have reached the territory that is today Lebanon and even some parts of Syria. At the same time, the southwest territory was not under their control, being known at the time as Philistia. Part of it is still today not under their control, the Gaza Strip, but at the time the non-Israeli territory was larger. This was the territory of the United Monarchy, Kingdom of Israel, which existed from 1047 BC to 930 BC. It was followed by the two kingdoms of Israel and Judah in parallel with a breakup of the rest of the territory. This version of the northern kingdom of Jerusalem, also known as the Kingdom of Samaria, occupied even less territory but still stretched over into Jordan and even more into Syria, it seems. Then came the Assyrian invasions, and Israel was essentially destroyed until it was restored in the 20th century. Today it has these borders, and we can see that they have at least shifted a little to the west. The territorial evolution and overall history of Israel is pretty interesting. Let me know in the comments if you'd like a video on that. Another super interesting one recommended by you in the comments is Saxony, in what is today Germany. This shift is even shown on the modern map of German states, with 3 of them taking this name. Lower Saxony in the northwest, Saxony-Anhalt in the center, and the Free State of Saxony in the southeast. And the reason why, despite a little confusing, can be simplified to a few historic events. Old Saxony was the homeland of the Saxons during the early Middle Ages. They were one of the 4 main peoples of Germany. Its territory at the time corresponds to northwest Germany today, known as the State of Lower Saxony. It existed from around the 6th to the 9th centuries AD. After that, the Old Duchy of Saxony existed in roughly the same territory between 804 and 1296. With time, they began to expand eastwards, taking over the area of the modern state of Saxony-Anhalt. Because of various dynastic issues, it began to fragment into several smaller territories under the control of various branches of the Saxon dynasty. The one that took the lead and the Saxon name were the ones that now controlled the conquered territory of Saxony-Anhalt. These joined through marriage to the noble family of the Margraviate of Meissen, which controlled the area around modern Dresden, the third and free state of Saxony today. Eventually, the center of power of the ruling branch of the Saxony dynasty moved there too. Old Saxony became known as Lower Saxony because it's closer to the sea level, while the lands around Dresden became known as Upper Saxony. The middle part passed into the control of the princes of Anhalt, so it became known as Saxony-Anhalt. And so, this at the time country and now region moved from one side of Germany to the other, leading to the establishment of 3 different places with the same name and a connected origin. In similar fashion to the African examples we saw in the other video, we have Mauretania. The ancient kingdom of Mauretania with an E was founded in the 3rd century BC in present-day Algeria and Morocco. The modern country of Mauretania with an I is located here, pretty far away. However, they are slightly connected in origin. Although, don't get me wrong, there was no moving of a country here, it's just a name movement, if you will. The ancient kingdom of Mauretania started off in what is today Morocco, then annexing the areas of northwestern Algeria that were known as the Kingdom of Numidia. It soon became a Roman protectorate and then province, being split into 2, Mauretania Tingitana, which is modern-day Morocco, and Mauretania Kaiserensis in modern-day North Algeria. Modern Mauretania, despite being completely different, does take its name from it. At one point in medieval times, parts of modern Mauretania were under the control of the Moroccan kingdom, previously known as Mauretania. When the territory was named in 1958 by colonial powers, they chose this name as an homage to its historical ties to the Moorish crown. In fact, the term Mauretania derives from the Greek and Roman exonym for the Berber peoples of the regions up north, the Maori. All the way in America, the Mormons. It's not by lack of trying that the Mormons aren't their own country, or at least their own state in the US. Johnny Harris has a terrific video about their origin. I'm not going to get into the whole story because that video does it better than I ever could, but the main point is the Mormons wanted to settle somewhere where they could build and rule themselves. However, they kept being kicked out of wherever they were and struggled to find an ideal location for their planned city. This process led to something known as the Mormon Exodus. This map is great to understand it. They began in New York with the founding of Mormonism, they moved to Ohio but were forced to leave, then to Missouri, then Illinois, Iowa, and finally settling in Utah, where they attempted to create their own country, or at least state of Deseret. They were unsuccessful and the Utah territory was instead established by the United States. But still, there's a lot of Mormons in this region up to today. Partly in America and partly in Europe at the time of this move, Portugal. Portugal's borders are some of the oldest in the world to remain unchanged. However, this didn't stop the country from moving at one point, at least in one aspect. In 1807, to avoid capitulating to the French invasion of Portugal by Napoleon, the Portuguese royal family and its court of over 10,000 people jumped on some ships and fled to Brazil, at the time a Portuguese colony. This wasn't just an exile. They effectively moved the center of power of the Portuguese kingdom and empire to another continent. For 13 years, Rio de Janeiro replaced Lisbon as the capital, and the country was actually renamed to the United Kingdom of Portugal, Brazil, and the Algarves. Eventually, they returned to Lisbon, and the whole process actually opened the door to the early independence of Brazil at the hand of the Portuguese prince, but that is a whole other topic. And finally, back in America, a quick mention to the Cherokee. The Cherokee nation first existed here, closer to the East Coast and overlapping into the modern states of Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and the Carolinas. With the westward expansion of the recently formed United States, the natives were forced to lose more and more territory, culminating in the infamous and terrible Trail of Tears, a forced displacement of Native Americans further west. This happened to the Cherokee, as well as the Seminole, the Creek, the Choctaw, and Chickasaw tribes. This map illustrates it very well. All of them were forcefully moved to what was then known as Indian Territory in what is today Oklahoma. So, those are a few more examples of countries, nations, peoples, and sometimes just plain names that moved territories throughout history, some coexisting, others being predecessors of modern states, some being temporary moves, and others just shifts of territory. One main example of the shift of territory is, as I mentioned before, Poland. A lot of you wanted a video on Poland's territorial evolution, so I'm happy to announce that it is in the works and will be out in 2 weeks on October 27, so make sure to turn on notifications if you don't want to miss it. Regarding this one, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you have any additional information or corrections? Also, are there any more countries that moved territory? Thanks so much for watching. Remember to subscribe if you want, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge. And thank you again to Conflict of Nations for sponsoring this video. Again, they're a free online PvP strategy game which takes place in a modern global warfare scenario. If you want to try it out, click the link in the description, choose your country, and fight your way to victory.